I think a lot of traders who, or even aspiring traders, they think that it can be so easy, or they think that maybe in the first year, that's when the first Lamborghini comes in, maybe at the 11th month or something. But it's significantly more difficult, to the point that, right, like in the first year, if you break even, that's a pretty awesome month, like worth celebrating. Meanwhile,
Yep.
maybe some of your friends are actually, green on the month.
Yep, yep, yep. And I don't think I was ever disillusioned about the learning curve. I think the big appeal, what was so great about everything was just the ethos of trading. Because if you take something like investment banking or the big four, the formality, the face time you got to put in, the bureaucracy, a lot of the BS, even things like wearing a suit to work. Like I very much kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to do things my way. And the thought of, I thought I was, look, I don't think I'm Rain Man. I don't think I'm Elon Musk or anything, but I thought I was like sharp enough. And more than anything, I just knew that nobody was going to have more grit or work harder than me or care more. And that was in my control. And I knew that. Like, you look, maybe you really do actually need to be a genius. I had no idea, but I just knew, they will need to pry this job, from my dead body. And the whole premise was like, without being Rain Man, without being some computer science whiz, you can just through your own soft skills and grit really persevere and come from nothing to massive, massive success. And coming from kind of a background where money was definitely an issue at times. So like the thought of like, I remember sitting on the desk next to my trainer, and he was one of the best ever on the street. And so I specifically made some big sacrifices to train directly under him. And I remember there would be days where, some really big days where he'd make a couple hundred grand, or then even normal days where he would just make 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand. And I would just say, like, Lance, like, if you can even just do, a tenth of what this guy does, if you can even just learn anything and just get the basics and just do the little layups alongside this guy, you need to figure this out. It was just between the lifestyle and the casualness and the thought that the world is your oyster. There's this huge universe of strategies and things, and it's just for you to figure out through time, effort, and thought.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during that first year? And was that typical of normal first year trader sort of issues? Was there anything particular that you had to deal with and overcome, that some of the other traders were already, breaking out of? Or does everyone just have their own sort of struggles in trading?
Sure. So I think there's parts that everyone struggles with because, of course, finding edge is hard. Executing in real time, there's psychology issues. Everyone has the same general issues you must surmount to extract money from the market. Then everyone also applies their own personal limiting beliefs, their own biases, their own weaknesses, their own strengths. So probably most detrimental for me, this will probably blow everyone away, but I tend to be, I'm fairly conservative. I would say, like, I'm actually not some huge risk taker. I'm actually, if you were to talk about doing dumb, dangerous things, I'm pretty risk adverse. And I'm also extremely, extremely reflective and thoughtful. Everything I do is very planned out, very, very thought about. It's not spontaneous shoot from the hip. And so for the style of day trading that Trillium specializes, it's very much, we're not competing over hours and days. We're competing, or even minutes, honestly. We are competing on seconds and tenths of seconds there for some of those strategies. And if you're a very diligent, thought out, systematic person, here I am, where it's like, ah, yes, on the whiteboard, I'm going to weigh the pros and the cons.
Mhm.
Allow me, Mr. Market, these 5-10 minutes to get back to you. But meanwhile, the trade's already gone. And even in the 5 seconds it took me to say that, a breaking news trade, boom, it's gone generally. in seconds. And so that was my big weakness. But now if you were to ask me what was my strength, it was essentially that systemization and that diligent thinking. So at some point after a lot of struggle, I had the thought, like, wait a second, Lance, like, this is your strength, that's your weakness. How can you use your strength to turn your weakness, to overcome this weakness? And that got me on the path of meta learning, right? So how can I diligently plan out the most effective ways to learn? If I'm a slow thinker, how can I train fast thinking? How can I increase my processing time? And so I was kind of paradoxically very deliberate and intentional and reflective on how to increase my thinking speed. And some of the solutions I came up with was I started recording all my screens. I did a video recently with S&B Capital about building this database of videos where whatever the biggest trades were of that week, I'd be recording my screens the whole week. And so I would condense each week down to maybe 15, 20 minutes of video. And I would just on the weekends replay those again and again and again and retrade them and retrade them. And so much of the analogy I give to people is if you're a 16-year-old trying to drive a car, you're processing so many things at once and you struggle and you have slow reactions, poor reactions, because it's all, none of it, you don't have these pathways built up that you can just like short circuit a lot of this. And so now as an adult, like if you and I were to drive, we can talk on the phone and eat a Big Mac while driving the car on the highway and everything else, because so much is now automated in our brain. The way we're processing, we have so many driving hours under us and so many reps that I know, the jackass like speeding up to traffic is going to try and cut in front of me. You can anticipate. And so much is building those connections in your brain just through reps. And so I would do reps and reps and reps and reps. And what's crazy to me is I ended up probably being one of the fastest people on the street. If you were to look at order flow inefficiencies and stuff like that, there was probably, I would wager there's probably nobody faster than me in the world on some of this stuff. Because like if there's an order flow inefficiency and maybe 100,000 shares were available to get, and I get 70,000 of them, it's like, well, no one else was out there. And it was all just through those practices.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting because it sounds like it wasn't just all gaining more experience. It sounds like there was also a lot of inward reflection and understanding yourself. And like you had mentioned, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and being able to flip those either inside out or at least come to terms and make friends with maybe some of your weaknesses to the point that maybe they'll still be there. You learned how to pretty much tame them and use them to your advantage.
Yep. And I've worked with a lot of traders as colleagues, as trainees. Like I've mentored them. I've trained a lot of people, and there are some people that are naturals, and they don't really need to put as much work in. They don't need to be as systematic. I did a daily report card, which was just a daily review of my trading every single day for countless years. No excuses, never missed a day really. And I would have to put in the work just because a lot of things didn't click for me. And there's people that don't need to do that. And good for them, like lucky them, but certainly that systemization and that meta learning was kind of what it took for me, and then what became my expertise in training other traders.
It's refreshing to hear that you didn't just knock it out of the park from day one.
Way more important is how quick you are out of the gate is, and I talk about this with Atomic Habits. And the whole bobblehead concept. It's how long are you improving for, and how long are you sustaining? That determines where you end up. It's not how quick you are out of the gate. If you start up here but you're going like that, you're getting nowhere. I'd rather start down here with a really nice slope.
Yeah, for a good trajectory.
Yeah, a nice slope and a long runway, that's everything.